Welcome to Miley Media. Today I'm going to share some stories with you about sleep paralysis. More than 3 million US cases per year, so it's a pretty common thing. And if you Google it, you'll see a nice picture and a nice clear-cut description of what it is, but today I'm going to bring you the scary and darker side of it. Number 1. I might have been in someone else's nightmare a few nights ago. I've been experiencing sleep paralysis for over 20 years. I had different ghost hallucinations for the last decade. I've been experiencing the sensory hallucinations. I have other sleeping troubles, and I am likely a narcoleptic. A few nights ago, something new and a different type of disturbing happened to me. I've been under stress and pressure lately, and felt drained that day. I checked a few things online to keep my mind at ease before going to bed. I actually felt rather good at the time I was ready to drift off. In my dream, I find myself at the foot of my bed. The bedside lamp was on, and a woman was sleeping there. Before I could figure out who she was, I flew toward her neck and saw her here. I couldn't help it. It's like I was taken. Then the whispering started, in English, very fast, annoyed, low voice, while I realized I was in the woman's head and couldn't move. I started to get mental pictures from the words. They were directions. Then, feeling my eyes were still closed, I could see the room. Sitting in an armchair was someone familiar to the woman, but not to me, and guessed I had heard a phone conversation. I felt like I was not supposed to hear that, and felt truly sorry for the intrusion. Then I woke up. I still don't know who they were. I've posted a text that was too long before. If I am someone else's sleep paralysis demon, I am so sorry. Number 2. I remember my first encounter. I was sleeping in my couch. It was in the afternoon. The sun was shining, and I remember waking up in my sleep. This felt so real. I was able to see every single detail in my living room. Everything looked exactly the same. I thought, what is going on? I automatically became scared. I vividly remember having my arms crossed over my chest. I was struggling to break free. I panicked. I felt like I was in a straitjacket. I was trying so hard to break free. I remember a figure walking by, but I couldn't recognize who it was. I continued to panic and struggle. I was so scared. Finally, I broke free, and at the same time, I jumped off the couch. I was confused, startled, and terrified. The next few times were similar, confused and scared. Finally, I remember waking up in my sleep paralysis. I thought, oh, here we go again. By this time, I had learned to cope with it. I embraced this nightmare. I can remember I just laid there and thought, wow, I can't believe I am sleeping, but yet able to look around my room. Everything exactly like my room. I would just lay there and look around. I wasn't scared anymore. After I would just drift off into sleep. I wouldn't even fight it anymore. I shared these details with a friend that encountered this too. We were spooked. The last time I had sleep paralysis was pretty eerie, to say the least. It started as usual. Me waking up in my room in the dark. I could see everything clear. I looked around my room. This time I was able to hear some noises coming from the outside of my window. Sirens and cops and firefighters, radios. I thought to myself, there is something going on outside. I continued to look around. I noticed my door was open. Outside of my room there's a hallway, and there was nothing but blackness there. I could feel this void. No, not void. I felt an abyss. This bottomless pit from hell. I can feel this emptiness there, but yet so strong and full of darkness. I continued to look at the abyss, and that's when I realized it wasn't my ordinary sleep paralysis. I knew there was something sinister there at the end of the hallway. I stared, and then I can hear a little girl whisper. I can't understand what she's saying, but I can hear her, and I know it was coming from the end of the hallway. I am staring, and the whispers are getting closer, louder, and faster. I start to panic, and I hear the whispers, louder and closer. And I am just staring at the entry point. I want to wake up already. I can feel this strong presence on the other side, and just as the whispers are at the edge of my room, I snap out and wake up. I quickly look at my door and see if it was closed. I sigh of relief. I stood there and wondered what was the little girl saying. Why was she in the pit from hell? What did she want? I simply drifted into sleep. The most scary part is that my friend told me he had encountered the same whispers coming from a girl in his sleep. Number 3. I am well versed to sleep paralysis and lucid dreaming, because some time ago I was practicing it a lot. Maybe it was a figment of your imagination, but it also could be an entity from a spiritual realm. I am 100% sure that there is another dimension in which there are some kind of beings. Let me tell you one of my experiences. I met a girl I fell in love with completely. A great person, a noble, externally beautiful girl, but also a pure soul, a godly young woman. After 3 months of our acquaintance, I was in her room, because we watched movies till late that night. I didn't mention to her about my fun with lucid dreaming and sleep paralysis, but I didn't want to make a freak of myself. I really wanted to impress her, that I am polite, ordinary boy. So she was absolutely unaware. We sat until late, and I didn't even know when I fell asleep, and she was lying next to me. Before sunrise, I fell into a lucid dream once again. I will not tell the dream, but it was a very dark and almost demonic atmosphere of the worst horror movie, the feel of total emptiness, and a chasm of dark and death. But I had no influence on the dream. I decided to wake up. After a while, I successfully woke up, but the sleep paralysis remained, so I couldn't move. My eyes were open, and I was totally conscious. I was already well versed in lucid dreams and sleep paralysis, so I thought, okay, well, here we go again. I was on my back. I lay on my back, looked straight ahead at the wardrobe and the door. And then to my horror, I saw a tall, completely black figure, as if hooded, with head bowed. I have goosebumps when I'm writing this now. It was standing between doors and the wardrobe. I didn't see the face of this being. In my ears, I began to hear a very high, squeaky sound, like a whistle, very high frequency. The high-pitched sound increased more and more. Then that began to slowly approach towards me. God, how terrifying it was. Another sound appeared in my head, like noise, as if my brain was boiling, like a rustling of many waves. The closer the person was to me, the more buzzing in my head intensified, until finally, this being stood over me and leaned over me, and I felt piercing pain in my ears, as if someone pierced my head through the ears. Then the sound began to turn into a disgusting growling. More and more, increasingly. I was so terrified that I shouted in my mind, Jesus, help me, rescue me. And then suddenly, at an accelerated pace, all backed off. I've heard a rapid, hateful, short growling shout, full of anger and hate, and I suddenly woke up. Nothing changed in the room, just this being, and the symptoms disappeared, and I felt lightness and relief in my head. I felt something like my nose had cleared up after a long illness. I don't know how to describe it. This lightness. I was still lying on my back, shocked, shaking, and breathing quickly, and thanking God in my thoughts. I turned sideways and looked at my girlfriend. She was awake and looked at me with terrified eyes. I told her, "You wouldn't believe what I just experienced." And she instantly answered me in a scared voice, "I think I know." I woke up, but I couldn't move. There was a black hooded figure next to the door. After a while, this figure came up to you and leaned over you, and then I woke up. It shocked me. Without a conversation, she described exactly what happened. Moreover, I had never told her about these matters before. Sleep paralysis, LD, OOBE, etc. She was not familiar with it. She didn't even hear about it before, and she did not practice it, ever. So I did not influence her in any way. It was 100% proof for me, like a shot in the face, like a pierce to the core of my consciousness. It devastated me, completely changed my mind about this fun, and about the world relationship between man and spiritual sphere. I have found, beyond any doubt, that there is something. Number 4. When I was a little boy, I was very interested in the paranormal and would read hundreds of books of ghost stories from books that I would borrow from the library. None of this really infected me until I met her. Reading all these books and watching TV shows about ghosts never affected me the way I had dreams. Sure, as a child I would get nightmares, but these dreams were different. Somehow I figured out a way to control what happened in my dreams. Looking back on this now, the term lucid dreams would correctly describe the situation. In these dreams, I would have the time of my life. I could fly around and have the same powers that superheroes would have. All these dreams were fun and all, but I started to notice this girl who looked to be the same age as me. The image of her imprinted on my mind. She had a golden bronze hair that glistened in the sun, and hazel eyes were quite calming to me. Her skin appeared pale, but whenever I saw her in the sunlight, this was not the case. She would always catch my eye because she wore a red dress with a black tint. Being a curious kid, in one of my dreams I attempted to talk to her. I walked up to her nervously and said, hello? She seemed occupied on something and didn't respond right away. She slowly turned her head and acknowledged me. Oh, hello there. I was a little thrown off by her accent, but I continued. What are you doing here? I'm sorry, but this isn't the time right now. What do you mean? It's not the right time. Well, can I at least know your name? I'm sorry. She pushed me back violently, and I landed in my bed. I tried to close my eyes and go back into the dream, but that didn't work. After that dream, I never saw her in any of my dreams. This dream was soon forgotten, as the years passed until I was 16 years old. Every so often, I would see a flash of red, but that flash of red didn't concern me at all. Next, I began to see a haze of pink through the darkness of closing your eyes and going to sleep. That made me feel weird, but it didn't affect me. Soon after that, I started to get a feeling that someone was watching me. Every so often, I would see a figure that would pass by the perifocal of my eyes. Now I started to think I was getting haunted by something or someone. To be completely honest, a whole rush of my childhood memories started coming back to me, and I got really scared of whatever was following me. One night I was laying in bed half asleep when a cold presence came over me. I opened my eyes to see her standing at the side of my bed. This time she looked about the same age as me. Same hair, same face and dress. I thought I had just encountered a false awakening, but this was so real. I tried slapping myself or rubbing my eyes, but she still stood there looking at me. Then she began to speak. Hello. Now is the right time for me to speak. I will only tell you this one time and one time only. You can see things that many other humans cannot. Love, empathy, and respect flows through you. Do not let the things that happen in this life affect you. Compassion best describes your internal character. She held out her hand, and I put out mine. Her hand was cold to the touch, but as soon as she touched my hand, she vanished out of sight. Looking back at this story, I still have so many questions. Was it possible to encounter a friendly ghost? Was it a coincidence that she decided to appear before me in a time where I was going through the worst of my depression? Am I going insane and seeing things? What the hell is going on with me? All I could hold on to was the last thing she said. Compassion best describes your internal character. That phrase was something my mother told me on my 15th birthday, which was a month before she passed away from stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I want to believe that this ghost had some connection to my mother, or if my mother was talking through this ghost. In the end, I was left alone to my own thoughts once again. In my lifetime, I had only ever 3 experiences with a ghost, but none except this one would I call friendly. Number 5. I've never experienced this before, and it's been happening to me for over a week now. Hopefully it tapers off or reduces in frequency, but here's the deal. It lasted about an hour this morning, until I woke up around 7 a.m. I was having a dream that I was in elementary school, and the relationship between us kids were quite close. Slowly in the dream, I began to grow up, and people started dying early in life or had horrible lives as a result of trauma. If you watch The Butterfly Effect, you've seen this before. But then I kept going back to those elementary school days and seeing psychological signs of impending doom of my classmates, learning that they were being molested or on drugs at early ages. Then I felt it, an alien in my room, probing me with instruments. It was humming and using lights to inspect me, and it wouldn't let me go. I got a glimpse of it and went back to the dream. I continued this for an hour. My legs in the dream became weak. People started noticing in the dream that I was paralyzed. I kept trying to go back to my normal life in sunny Orlando, and the path to it kept repeating itself. The kids in elementary school started dying, being murdered in the school, and embarrassing things began to happen to me while in the classroom. The alien was back, touching me and probing me and standing on my chest. During the last part of this ordeal, I began to try to come up with explanations of what was actually happening. I knew I was in a dreamlike state, but what was it exactly? I thought of a coma. Had I gotten into an accident, and this was what a coma felt like? If this was a coma, this is fucking terrifying. Then I remembered this coronavirus pandemic we are all going through at the present moment. Is this some type of symptom where you can't move due to a bad fever? Did I develop symptoms overnight and my body is trying to fight this thing off? I worried about my family getting sick because they would come in contact with me and suddenly felt a great need to warn them. But again, I couldn't move. The alien was back, and this time it was giggling, and it was at this point where I tried to fight and woke up in a normal state in my own bed and got to Googling. Alright guys, that's it for today on sleep paralysis stories. Make sure you subscribe, comment, and share these videos. If you have a personal story that you want me to narrate, my Reddit handle is jmiley91. You can message me on there, or you can just comment on the video itself. Thank you guys so much for listening.